On this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, we will look at some of the top headlines from the past week and speak with IEEE on the standards work within the SDN and NFV space.
Today's episode is brought to you by Telecom Careers, the #1 global telecom and wireless job board, telecomcareers.net.
Welcome to this week's NFV SDN Reality Check. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief here at RCR Wireless News. We'll start off the show by looking at some of the top news stories of the past week. The Linux Foundation's OPNFV project teased plans for its second software platform release, noting Brahmaputra was set to be unveiled in February. Speaking on the organization's blog post, Ericsson's Chris Price said OPNFV had recently hit milestone D, which means the release is API and feature complete. Price, who leads open source industry collaboration for Ericsson in the areas of NFV, cloud, and SDN, and is an active member of the technical steering committees of the Open Daylight and OPNFV projects, said the release was focused on further stability of the deployment, new features, projects, and enhanced documentation. In June, OPNFV released its first software platform, dubbed Arno, which it said was a developed-focused release designed to foster the development of NFV, virtual network functions, and use case-based testing. Also this week, Affirm Networks scored a deal with Spain-based mobile network operator Air Networks to provide its virtual evolved packet core platform as the foundation for Air's network virtualization plans. As part of the deal, Air is set to deploy Affirm's mobile content cloud solution to help in the virtualization of its mobile network infrastructure. Affirm said the NFV platform is designed to help lower operating costs and increase flexibility for mobile carriers by moving away from legacy infrastructure into a more agile and flexible virtualized architecture, as it empowers the creation and launch of new services and applications in a matter of hours and days instead of months with traditional hardware-based products. Financial terms of the deal were not announced. When it comes to NFV and SDN and cloud platforms, one of the greatest challenges facing the industry is standards. We recently had a chance to speak with Eileen Healy, who's co-chair of the SDN Initiative at IEEE, to discuss the organization's work in terms of bringing together industry players. Let's take a look at the interview now. Well, thanks for joining us this week. This week we are joined by Eileen Healy, who's the co-chair of the SDN Initiative at IEEE, to talk a bit about this great, wonderful world of SDN and NFV and virtualization. So, hey, Eileen, thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
Hey, Dan. Thanks a lot for having me, and look forward to having a good conversation.
Great. Well, maybe start off with, I think most of our watchers, I guess, and a lot of our readers of RCR are aware of IEEE. You guys have been, part of the telecom space for forever, seems like. But I guess now this kind of moving towards this virtualization space, can you, I guess, maybe touch a bit about, I guess, what IEEE is I guess, doing in terms of this move towards looking at SDN and virtualization?
Yeah, thanks. Well, if I could take a step back, we're so much more than that.
Sure.
IEEE is a global organization with over 400,000 members, and in the telecom space, most people are familiar with one of the societies, the Communication Society, ComSoc.
Yep.
But there are many societies within the IEEE, and so including the Computer Society, which is obviously deeply important in software-defined networks. There are also societies such as the Vehicular Technology Society, which is all about the connected car. So the IEEE, I think its broadest charter is to really bring to address all engineering, electrical and electronic across the world, and act as a very trusted partner for academia and for industry. So in that regard, looking at software-defined networks within the IEEE and even beyond ComSoc is a very important effort within the organization.
Got it. And then I guess for the SDN part of this that you're churning up there, so what's the main focus for you guys in terms of looking at the space?
Well, there are a number. ComSoc has a lot of activity associated with SDN and its partner, NFV. Sure. As you know, you have to have all these virtualized functions in order to build up the software-defined networks. And so IEEE recognize the importance of SDN as we move forward, and the importance of it not being siloed into any particular area within the IEEE. And so the SDN Initiative is a short-term, 2 to 3 year research project, which enables all the different societies within the IEEE to collaborate and join forces along with external organizations to look at all the different aspects that we need to pull together, and standards obviously being an important area of that, in order to have really realize the potential of software-defined networks within both service providers and for consumers and end users.
Got it. Well, no, so it's kind of a short-term then project for you guys. Like you said, 2 to 3 years. That seems very confident you guys can get a lot done in that amount of time. It does seem like, just from my own covering of the space, it seems like it's going to be a very long, drawn-out process. But it sounds like you guys are ready to hit the ground running and get this thing knocked out quickly.
Well, we are, yeah, definitely. And that's not to say it'll end at that point. It'll be rolled into other activities. But really, it gives us a time to be very focused on looking at the broader ecosystem and the importance, the areas that need to be addressed globally and across all different technology spaces in order to really achieve the results that we are looking for.
Okay. So I guess what would IEEE bring specifically, and maybe what's the main thing you guys bring to this project? Because it does seem like there are a lot of organizations out there are working towards a lot of standards. Etsy's doing stuff with NFV and lots of trade groups. And I mean, it seems like for a while there, every week there was a new organization popping up to do something in terms of SDN. Yeah.
Well,
what do you guys bring specifically to the plate here?
Yeah, many things, but I would say two in particular. For 2016, we have a very focused effort with goals to aggregate information about all the different test beds that are emerging across the globe. And this is a very important area that all these different separate activities are looked at in aggregate, and that there is some coordination between those activities. So that's one area. Another area is in collaborating with other standards bodies. As you know, the IEEE is a very large and important standards body, but in things like open mobile edge cloud and moving some of the software-defined functions to the edge of the wireless network. That's an area where we're looking both at test beds and emerging standards. Another really important area that the IEEE has always been uniquely qualified for is the role that we play in not just academia, but education in general. So it's so important. I know as a young engineer, that's how everybody joins. When you're in engineering school, you join the IEEE. It's so important if we're going to have the move as quickly as we can now that all the elements are lined up so that we can finally really realize the benefits of SDN. We have to have the pipeline of engineers who can really step in and have the skill sets and have the knowledge to build and migrate all telecom networks to this new platform. So that's another very important role that the IEEE plays.
Got it. And obviously that coordination aspect, like you said, there are a lot of test beds that have been popping up surrounding this move for the past couple of months now. And a lot of these seem to be, I mean, some are independent, but some of them are vendor-centric, or vendors are so it always seems like there's some concern about whether there's actually communication between these different test beds, because, whenever you get different vendors involved or different private entities involved, it's always, you're never quite sure what you're going to get out of that. So, but it does seem like it's great then to have someone kind of coordinating those efforts. It seems like that's a pretty important part. And again, IEEE, like you said, I think most people who are involved in this have some sort of engineering background or some work there, are very familiar, obviously, with IEEE and maybe even members. So I'm guessing that kind of makes it easy for you guys to kind of be that coordinating and central, I guess, depot for everything going forward for this.
Right, and you hit upon an important element there, where you do have a lot of someone called this, for a shopping. You know, you have different contingencies, different people with different vested interests, starting up different test beds. And so the role the IEEE has always played is being this trusted entity where we, you know, and the quality is there because everything is peer reviewed, and there's a level there's a role in this coordination that the IEEE can uniquely play because of this, because we're not biased towards, you know, one particular implementation or one vendor implementation. So I think that's also an important area that we really feel we make a difference.
Yeah, and I think it's an important part right now because I know at least in the telecom space, you got a lot of history in the telecom space, you know, but it does seem like that the market is moving so quickly in this move towards SDN and NFV. But it seems like there's this needed role for someone to kind of make sure that they're that neutral party to kind of make sure at the end of the day that all these vested interests who are working, you know, doing their own parts, doing, you know, advancing the technology. But at the end of the day, that telecom operator who's deploying these platforms can be comfortable with knowing that, you know, things are going to work together. You know, they're not going to all of a sudden at the end of the day, you know, turn something on and they're not talking the same language, and there's just all these issues that could crop up. So it sounds like it's, you know, obviously it's an important part of this whole process.
Oh, yeah, that's very important. And you hit upon an important area in terms of the operating system and how you take all these piece parts and you actually build them up into network functions and deliver, you know, service delivery platforms. And so there's a lot of work in the open source space. That's another area where it's important to have this collaboration because you want that speed and agility of the open space. And yet in the telecom world, we have to have these standardized interfaces and predictability of, you know, one of the challenges is predictability of latency, for example, where if you have a vendor, tightly integrated hardware and software and a single entity that controls the performance of how that box performs. Mm-hmm. That's the legacy of the telecom industry, right? So we're working closely with a number of different organizations who are working on, even at the operating system level, of how we can actually have functioning global, open, ubiquitous telecom networks that you know, we've had forever. How do we do this under this new paradigm?
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, I mean, I know talking to operators myself. I mean, some of the more forward-thinking ones are, you know, are just taking it and running with it. I mean, they're a little more comfortable with the open source part of it because that's a big part of this.
Yes.
But you're right. There are those perhaps who are more in the wait and see approach, and they are kind of concerned because you're right. I mean, the legacy of telecom is they work with these certain vendors, got the equipment, you know, and it's all very rigidly controlled, and it's all been, you know, working well for the past 30, 40 years. But right, this new world of virtualization and open source, it's a new world for these guys. So they're obviously having to make sure that they're comfortable. I mean, like this, you know, the technology guys are comfortable with it, but the operations guys are the ones who are, you know, the ones who have to implement this have to make sure that they're comfortable with what they're putting out there. Because at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, they're getting a call at 2 a.m. that something's wrong, and so they're the guys who are obviously the most, the ones you have to convince, like probably the most about this. So.
Yeah, and the strong commitment to the customer. Yeah. I mean, the customer, you know, doesn't want to know how the sausage is made. They want it to work, and so there is that responsibility as an industry that we really have to deliver a good user experience, controllable quality of service, a whole range of things that you know, we need to assure we can control in this new environment.
Yeah, great analogy there. I like that one. That was good. But I guess as we now actually look at some of the bigger challenges right now, I mean, you know, you bring up obviously the interoperability perhaps, or the standards issue. Is that kind of the biggest challenge that you guys see as needing to be tackled first, or what do you guys, you know, as you hit the ground, you're running pretty aggressive at this. What's that one that's really going to need to be tackled?
Yeah, well, you know, that's certainly important. I would say from a service provider standpoint, you know, there are challenges in terms of and you alluded to it, migrating legacy networks. And that's not just the infrastructure itself. It's how do you take your whole operations and in the way that's been built up over the years in terms of tending specialized boxes, yeah. And how do you migrate that to really what becomes an IT operation? Yeah. It's software driven and software defined. And so that certainly is a challenge for network operators, in part because you, at least for legacy networks, you have to maintain those. You have to maintain both. So there's a lot of hand waving about how this is going to reduce CapEx and OpEx and all of that. But if you're out there on the front lines, you have to manage that very carefully to make sure that that overlapping part doesn't spike your costs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that orchestration part of this between the legacy and the new is going to be the big challenge, because you're right. I mean, operators hate to have to run two different networks. I mean, that's, there's a history of operators struggling to run multiple networks. That's the last thing you want to do is put something else out there. But you're right. I mean, but there is going to be that timeline where it might be 5 or 10 years or maybe even longer, where they are running kind of legacy and then the new together. And, eventually you're going to want to shut off that legacy at some point, hopefully. But that's going to be, you're right, that's going to be a challenge to kind of manage the operations, but also the cost aspect of that kind of a hybrid environment there.
Yeah, and one other challenge is education. We'll talk about that in a second, but to close on the service provider environment, we've been working on a proof of concept of something called CORD, which is central office redesign. And it's so important to how do you, these are very interesting assets at the edge of the network, but how do you really turn those into units that are functioning the way data centers work? I mean, the reason data centers are very agile is there are very few differentiated parts. It's all in the software that goes into those. And how do you move that to the edge? So both will be working on and are working on OMAC, the Open Mobile Edge computing, which brings cloud computing out to the edge, and doing that in concert with service providers as to how they move those well positioned from a geographic standpoint, those assets, and move them to really take full advantage of the SDN environment.
Makes sense. Yeah, and obviously, like you said, the education part of this is going to be a huge aspect. Well, I mean, I know talking to operators, they've even said that that's kind of their biggest challenge probably is the fact that just getting their own employees educated on what this move is all about and what they're going to be doing, that's probably going to be their biggest challenge. I mean, the technology always seems to get worked out, but it's just a matter of getting everybody on board with it. That could be a huge challenge.
So there's a lot of activity, and we within the IEEE and the SDN Initiative are producing webinars, short, publicly available courses where people can learn a little bit of the basics. But then we also have such deep connections with academia and the universities that really getting the coursework, within engineering programs, training engineers with the right skill sets to hit the ground running when they join industry.
Yeah, having those little tutorials, that's going to be, it seems like a really big part of this. I know in the past people maybe have kind of pushed off those things, but it seems like in this new world, you need to be on board with those things. So I'm guessing those would be pretty well received, I would think. I know for myself, I know, again, I'm from a reporter's point of view, I'm just covering a thin layer on top, but I know at some point I'll probably have to start watching those myself just so I know all the new acronyms, because that's always, as we know, that's
with the acronyms at least.
That's the biggest challenge for telecom is always the acronym. So that'll be hard to get a hold of. Well, I guess maybe looking forward a bit on this. I mean, there's been talk about when we'll see more deployments of SDN and NFV in the network. And I know 2015 was a big year for POCs. A lot of POCs out there happening and showing good progress. And it seems like 2016 might be maybe a continuation of that, maybe a little more advanced than that. But I guess as you look at the market, what sort of timing or what sort of time frame do you see as maybe moving away from POCs and more towards some actual deployments? Or what's your view on how this is progressing and where we might see some more of this actually out in the real world there?
Well,
You're on the spot.
There's some of this being deployed already, as you know. It's vendors are incorporating it into their equipment. We've talked about service providers, but the infrastructure vendors certainly are also completely changing their business models.
Yeah.
Have to change them.
Yeah.
So all of that activity is going on, and a lot of the vendors are incorporating, sometimes not fully, standardized, or because they're trying to do it in advance of some of the standards being developed. But certainly there's some of that, and there will always be this, the putting starts and stops, and maybe a few dead ends in that process. But for our goal within the SDN initiative is really to pull together all of this beyond the proof of concept. There's still, that work is there'll be aspects of that will certainly continue, but we really see the test beds and getting those to the point where they can really prove in and form the kernels of a global infrastructure based on SDN. I really see 2016 as being a very important year in that regard. And looking at it in a holistic way from the total ecosystem. There's a lot of SDN, a lot of the focus of SDN is on the core network and even the edge network, but where IEEE and the SDN Initiative have a unique adder is that we're looking at end-to-end, right out to the end device, be that a smartphone or a smartwatch or a car or a building, to really look at that integrated view. So I think you're going to see some significant progress in 2016 on realizing what SDN brings to real telecom networks. Another area, we're working heavily across Europe, North America, and Asia, but we also hope in 2016 to have more involvement within the work that we're doing from the developing world. And so that's important too. When you think about, we oftentimes in the developed world sit and, think about, what new app is going to make it cooler, easier. But the truth is that there's so much potential for SDN and all of these technologies to help developing countries and in the developing world leapfrog.
Yeah.
And actually, they're in a great position in many ways, because all of the legacy stuff that we talked about, sometimes that is not as much of an issue. So we really hope, and once again, this is part of the IEEE's charter, is to really be all-inclusive from end to end, but then also across the globe, and all aspects of the deployment of telecom networks across the globe.
Yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, a lot of those developed countries, a lot of them are still 2G, 3G, thinking about going to 4G. But again, if they wanted to leapfrog a G, for instance, to go right to 5G, whatever that's going to be. But there's a lot of, obviously, virtualization is going to be a big part of that. So you're right, that could be a big move for them, is to just, kind of incorporate as much as they can into that next evolution and just make it as easy as possible.
Absolutely. Well, you and I have been doing this for a long time, and we know that 5G, since you bring it up, is so interesting because it really, many of the Gs so far have been all about the air interface.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so 5G with SDN and NFV is really going to be the first time we've had a more radical change in what it means to go from, 1G to the next G.
Yeah, it's like a real re-architecting of the network. I mean, obviously the move towards LTE, going to all IP was a big move, obviously, for a lot of carriers. But the 5G part of it, it seems like it's going to be, a lot of the air interface will probably be very similar to 4G, a lot of LTE-based air interface, but it's the behind-the-scenes stuff that's really going to be it seems like the big evolution for 5G, because that's going to be, bringing in small cells and different spectrum bands and virtualization. I mean, that's a lot of stuff behind the scenes to support all of that.
Right, but from the user standpoint, frankly, I don't know that users saw that much difference between 3G and 4G. But I don't know how you would feel about that. But I think
you said it, not me. Okay.
I'm hopeful as a user, eat our own dog food here, that I hope that we really do see this order of magnitude change in terms of capacity and our ability to use the network for from the user's perspective. Yeah. And not just the users being people, but of course the Internet of Things, and all the things that want to use the network. We have a lot of competition for the capacity, and hope that going forward we can improve that situation.
Yeah, obviously we always heard all this stuff in the past about having my refrigerator talk to my toaster, talking to my coffee machine, and all those things, and we always made fun of it in the past. But at some point that's going to start happening. These things are going to, behind our backs, going to be all talking to each other. We're not even going to know it. So.
Those things, and then also we're collaborating, as I mentioned earlier, with the IEEE Vehicular Technology Society, and they're the connected car, and that ties into autonomous vehicles and all these things that are really going to radically change the way we live, work, and play.
Yeah, that's the connected car part. Maybe we'll talk about this at another time, because that's a whole another hour-long conversation right there. I think we could definitely have. But yeah, maybe at some other point we can dig into some of these a little more in depth and kind of see where you guys are going on specific topics. But
yeah, we have a lot of experts who we would love to have you interview and bring this information out to them.
Yeah, that'd be great to do. But again, I definitely appreciate the insight today. It was good to get a nice overview, again, what you guys have been doing in terms of kind of this move to SDN. Obviously, you guys have a lot of history. IEEE is working, across a lot of different frontiers there. But getting a good insight there on what you guys are doing in the SDN space here for telecom. So we definitely appreciate the insight on that today. Thanks so much.
Do I get to do an advertisement?
Yes, please do it.
Oh, okay. SDN.IEEE.org. So that is the portal for the SDN IEEE community. It's free to join. Upper right-hand corner of the portal. You just click on that. You can join for free. We have a newsletter. We have we are actively seeking volunteers to support the efforts. There's a whole range of activities that people can be involved in. So we hope that people join.
And it's one of those things that the more people who join, it helps everybody. I mean, it's one of those things. It's crowdsourcing. It's got to get everybody on board on this and get everybody involved. So big part of this. So that sounds great. Well, again, Eileen, appreciate the insight today on this. Great to catch up on what you guys have been doing. And like I said, hopefully we'll talk again soon on this topic and get some more insight from what you guys are up to there at IEEE.
Okay, Dan. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks so much. Well, thanks for watching this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, which is the final episode of the year as well. I want to wish everyone a safe and sound holiday season, and please make sure to catch new episodes of the show beginning in January. Thanks for watching.
NFV SDN Reality Check with Dan Meyer is a production of RCR TV. To suggest show topics or to reach Dan, you can find him on email, dmeyer@rcrwireless.com, and on Twitter @Meyer_Dan. For more Dan, news on NFV SDN and everything wireless, find your way over to rcrwireless.com.